and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 254, and today's date is January 3rd, 2014. And the title of this episode is The People Are No Longer Believing Their Governments. This is how it begins. Before I get started, I just want to welcome all those people on YouTube who are subscribing. If you haven't visited the x22report.com site, come on over. I post the audio version of the report between 5 and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time before it goes up on YouTube. So if you want to hear it beforehand, come on over and you can hear it. Plus, there's many other things on the site. I keep tabs on potential false flag events. I've created a timeline of the economic collapse. I'm going to update it this weekend, and I'm tracking a couple of store items to see if they're going up or down for inflation deflation. And we also have the people. This is a forum of like-minded people. You can go there. It's completely free. You just sign up. You get a email. You confirm it, and you can start talking to people. Or you can just go on there and just go ahead and read what other people are writing. And all that is on the top tabs, and you just click on it and you can go. And during the day I put Sentinel alerts up there, and I comment on a couple of them as I put them up there, and you just click on Sentinel alerts and it'll bring you right to that page. And I just want to thank those people who donate to the site. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. It really helps out. And let's get into the economic collapse news. And we're going to go out to Portugal right now. And as I said in many of my reports, every single country needs to raise revenue because they realize this entire system that they have going here cannot be sustained, period. Portugal right now, the cabinet minister says the government plans to introduce temporary measures, and what possibly could be these temporary measures? And every time they say it's temporary, you know it's forever. Just like Richard Nixon said, they are going to take us off the gold standard temporarily, and that was back in 71, and now it's 2013. That is a long temporary time period. So right now what he's looking to do, he's going to try to raise funds by having people pay into the pension contributions. Right now they're paying in 2.5%. He wants to increase that, or just place an additional tax on the pensions to get as much money as they possibly can. Now, out in Spain, 70% of the Spanish citizens don't believe Prime Minister Rajoy on the recovery. And we're seeing this happen, and it's not just happening in Spain. We see it in France. We see it in Italy. We see it, of course, in Spain. We see it in Cyprus. We see it in Greece. The people are starting to realize that there is no recovery. This austerity and everything that they're doing, taking on more and more debt, just doesn't work. And this goes on to say that 70% of the Spanish citizens don't believe Prime Minister at all. And a year ago, 30% of the Spaniards saw 2014 as the year of the recovery. Now that number is down to 17%. And we all know, same thing that's happening here. The Congress has the lowest approval rating. They don't even the people of the U.S. don't even trust the government right now. They believe the government is the source of the problem, and this is how it begins. And I saw a report saying that most of the We the People petitions are not even being answered by the government when they reach the amount of signatures that are required. They are just sitting there for a year, 2 years. They're not even being answered anymore because the government doesn't care. They are looking out for themselves. They don't care about the people, when in reality they're only there to care about the people and to take care of our wishes. But we can see what's happening all over the world. The people are losing faith in their governments. They don't believe them anymore. They don't see a recovery. They see things getting worse. They see things are just not getting better, even though the governments are telling them that they're on their road to recovery and things are better. Here in the United States, of course, we had Obama out there campaigning that real estate is making a comeback. They're trying to let us know that unemployment is at its lowest level ever, and the GDP, inflation, or GDP is going up, inflation is under control, and the stock market is reaching all-time new highs. And this is to make you believe in the illusion that the economy is getting better. And of course, all these numbers are manipulated. They've changed the calculation of unemployment. I've said this many times, and we can see what is happening right now. And of course, the stock market continually goes up. Gold is being pushed down. It goes up a little bit, but you'll see they will push it back down again because they do not want people to realize that something is going on. And if gold starts shooting up, people are going to wonder why, and they have to continually manipulate the gold price so no one catches on until the very last minute. Now, in the UK, they are trying to make ends meet, just like everyone in every single country. And because of rising bills and high housing costs, are pushing many of the household budgets to the breaking point. 1 in 11 people are worried they will not be able to afford their rent or mortgage this month. And this is in the UK. And the warning comes days after a report from a Resolution Foundation think tank indicating that more than 1 million homeowners could be at risk of defaulting on their mortgages and losing their properties in the wake of even a small rise in interest rates. Now, we need to think back a little bit. We saw this before. We saw this in 2008 when interest rates started to rise. What happened? People were throwing in the towel. People couldn't make ends meet, and the entire system started to crumble apart. And this is not the only reason. There are many other reasons. But we saw what absolutely happens. Now, I've discussed in my other reports how all the retailers were channel stuffing, the automobile manufacturers were channel stuffing, and this was to make it look like GDP was going up. And look at the great numbers. Oh, but you know what? It always comes back to bite you later on, because what do the dealerships, what do all the retail stores do with all this merchandise, with all of this manufactured goods? It just sits there. And right now, GM misses sales expectations. Of course, they're blaming the weather. They're blaming the sun didn't come up the right way. The wind was blowing from the east to the west. They have many, many excuses. And what really happened is that they manufactured a lot of automobiles. They stuffed them into all the dealerships. They have around 76 to 80 days worth of automobiles, and they were crossing their fingers that the American people, the middle class, was going to come out and purchase like crazy this Christmas season. But guess what? When you have unemployment around, 25, 30%, underemployment very high because most of the people lost their full-time jobs and now they have part-time jobs. And since they have part-time jobs, they don't make the same amount of money. They don't have disposable income, so they cannot go and spend the money. And the last thing that people are going to do is say, hey, let's go out and get a new car. Instead, what they do is they go out and they purchase food. They pay their rent. They might pick up some clothing. And that's about it. They pay their things they need to pay for right now. They don't think about buying gifts. They don't think about buying cars. They don't think about any of this. And this is what is happening right now. And reported for this U.S. vehicle sales of about 230,000 vehicles was a decline of about 6.3% from 245,000 cars delivered a year earlier. Now, of course, the Fed, the government, they expected 1.5 sales increase in sales for the automobile manufacturers. Instead, they had a 6.3 decrease. They are completely out of touch. They have no idea what is going on. Or do they have an idea and they're just feeding us BS as they normally do, which I really believe that's what it is. Now, the problem comes in is that all these dealerships, from all the channel stuffing, all these cars are sitting on the dealer's lot, and they can't take any more cars. They can't sell them. They can't take more cars. So what's going to happen next month? Because they can't produce more cars because they have all these cars on the lot. Does that mean GDP is going to start heading in the opposite direction? Now, if that heads in the opposite direction, Is the Fed going to go, oh, wait a minute, we can't taper at this point? We'll have to find out and see. Now, domestically, vehicle sales are the lowest in 14 months. And right now, it is the lowest since 2008, actually. And nearly every automaker has reported lower than expected sales for the month of December relative to our forecast and the consensus. And I just want to bring up one other point here. I just mentioned that the number of cars that are delivered and sold compared to last year, you would actually think, because unemployment has come down. I mean, if we look at last year unemployment, it was around 7.8% or so. Now we're at 7%. More people are working, more people have jobs, more people have disposable income, right? That's what they're trying to tell us. The economy is improving. It's recovering. Look, unemployment's coming down. So it's 0.8% lower. Wouldn't you think that car sales would be going up at this point? Okay, now we understand the housing market is a complete bubble, and we understand that a couple things have happened since this summer. President Obama, of course, was out there, telling everyone the housing market was doing better. And what we realized was most of the mortgage companies or mortgage departments were laying off thousands of people. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank, Chase, 1-800 East Coast Mortgages. They're laying off thousands of people because they realize that this housing boom right now is really not a boom, and they're trying to slim down their mortgage departments because they realize what is coming. We also realize that mortgage applications are down by 66% or so, and most of the houses that are being purchased are purchased with cash. And what is happening right now, and we saw this before prior to 2008, the ARMs are coming back, the adjustable rate mortgages, because what's happening is mortgage rates are going up. People can't afford it, so to bring people back into the market, they're going to offer ARMs again. And this allows people to get homes at a lower interest rate, and they don't have to worry about the interest rate for 5 years, 10 years down the line, depending on which ARM they purchase or the ARM mortgage they get. And we can see that we are playing right back into what happened during the last housing crash, because they are running out of ideas and techniques to get people in to purchase these homes, because the cash buyers are looking and saying, you know what, it's time for us to get out. They're trying to sell their homes. Mortgage companies are closing. They're laying off people to get people. They tried the 100% financing, but as the rates go up, it pushes people out of the market. So now they have to resort to the ARMs. And we can see they are trying to do whatever they can to get people in here. And most of the people, by using the ARMs, will pay 35% less per month than a 30-year fixed mortgage. But what happens when interest rates go up or the ARM deadline occurs and the rates are much higher? This is what happened in 2008, because people took out ARMs in 2005, 2006, 2007, and 2008 interest rates started going up, and guess what happened? It completely decimated the people, and they could not make payments on their houses. We saw this happen first in California, and then it spread all across the country. We are going to see the same thing. We are following the exact same pattern that we did in the last housing crisis. And we also have to remember, yes, the Federal Reserve is still buying up those toxic real estate. Even though they're talking about tapering, it's only $5 billion a month. So if we split it down the middle, $42.5 billion, $5 billion less than that, they are still purchasing whatever that calculation comes out to be. What is it, 37 billion or so? And they are still purchasing that every single month, and the banks still have tons of inventory on their books which they're not releasing. Most of these houses are in foreclosure, but they're not reporting them in foreclosure. I have a couple of people that I know who are living in their houses, and they haven't paid a mortgage payment in over 2 years, and the banks have not come to get their houses because they don't want them. Now, Martin Armstrong warns Europeans of the coming bail-ins that are coming to every single person, not just in Europe, not just in America, to Canada, to Switzerland, to Australia, you name it, to the UK, you name it, it is coming. And he's warning that if you think that the European nation is only going to confiscate 10% of everyone's account, you are a bigger fool than you can realize. Because just like in Cyprus, they said to everyone, we're only going to take 8 to 10%, but guess what? They took 47%. And guess what? Capital controls are still in effect when they told everyone it would only be 2 weeks. Then after the 2 weeks, they told them, yeah, it'll be just another 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, it's coming up on a year, actually, that capital controls are in effect in Cyprus. And an IMF paper warns of savings tax and mass write-offs as West debt hits 200-year high. Well, they're starting to realize that this debt is unsustainable. Of course it is. The debt burdens in developed nations have become extreme by any historical measure and will require a wave of haircuts, warns IMF paper. Much of the Western world will require defaults, a savings tax, higher inflation to clear the way for recovery as debt levels reach 200-year high. Basically what they're saying is, we are going to have bail-ins. We are going to take your money. You have no choice in the matter. We are just going to take it. And everyone will lose their money. This is what they are planning. They are planning on capital controls. They are planning on taking your money. And guess what? They are not going to be able to do this without an event to allow them to close and put the banks on a bank holiday and keep them closed with capital controls. Because if they just go ahead and do it, everyone will be coming after these people. Think about it. If they do this throughout Europe, in the UK, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, what is everyone going to do? Because you know the word is going to get around very quickly that every single person is having their money removed from their accounts, and there is nothing that each person can do because the banks will be on a bank holiday, there will be capital controls in effect, and there is absolutely nothing you can do. Just look at Cyprus. What did they do? There was nothing for them to do, and they just sat there while the bankers all discussed how much they were going to take, and they first came out and said, oh, don't worry, it's only 10%, oh, it's only 15%, oh, it's only 22%, and before you know it, 47% of their money was gone. This time around, it has to be different, and they realize this. They just can't go in and say, let me take your money, because people don't have that much money, and the amount that they have they are using it just to barely survive at this point. Because think about the unemployment. Think about the underemployment. Think about what everyone is doing. If somebody has a small amount in the bank and that's their nest egg, they're living off this money. They need this money to survive. And if they're completely locked out of the bank, people are going to start to rise up because, again, people are no longer believing their governments. People don't believe they're in recovery. People don't believe that the governments have a solution. People believe that the governments are the source of the problem. So what is going to happen? And again, going back to 2008, people don't look at bankers too kindly these days. And if this happens without an event, people are going to be very, very angry. Now, I discussed this many times in many reports, and I'm going to continually discuss this. The gun confiscation is coming to America. They need to disarm every single person. Now, Obama's on vacation right now, and one of the major things that he decided to do is something that has to do with gun confiscation. And, you know, he writes executive orders. All these executive orders have to support some type of bill or law when it's passed, and he's creating more of these, and the Obama administration announced steps today aimed at keeping firearms out of the hands of the mentally ill, and President Barack Obama again urged Congress to pass broader gun control legislation. And remember, the gun bill and the UN Arms Treaty are pending in the Senate. John Kerry already signed the UN Arms Treaty. It has not passed, but the president said he will sign it. The Department of Justice is proposing to change rules for the federal background check system to clarify who under U.S. law is prohibited from possessing a firearm because of mental health problems. And we all understand what is going on here. Now, they don't do everything all at once. It's always incremental. They do it one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. Before you know it, you look back and you go, wow, how did this happen? Well, we can see what is happening. He has the executive orders ready. He has the bills ready. What is missing? The event. That is what's missing. And you can see already, which I already discussed on back on December 31st, they are leading up to another false flag event that will do with some type of mass shooting. And it's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrific. It's going to be one of the worst you've ever seen. And they need this to push the gun bills forward. And this is what they're using. This is what they're going to use this event for. But right now, what they are doing is that you can see the most populated states, New York, California, Illinois, New Jersey, Washington, they are all, and I know Washington's not a state, and what they're doing is they are creating these draconian laws which mimic the gun bill that's in the Senate, and 80% of the people are going to come down and hand in their weapons because they have a larger magazine that is required by law, so they hand them in. So they're going to take care of the 80% of the people. The same thing's going to happen on a federal level. They're trying to get the law passed so they can do this, and hopefully what they believe is going to happen, and of course it will, 80% of the people saying, okay, let me hand in my weapon. I have 30 rounds in here, and I'm only allowed 10 or whatever. So I'm going to hand in this weapon here because it can sustain more than what I have. Then they're going to go after the mentally ill. And this goes back to the veterans. And they're going to hook this into the health care. And it will pop people's names up. And they will be called in and say, I'm sorry, you can't have a weapon. You can't have a weapon. And that's going to get probably another 10% of the people. So now they have about 10% of the people to worry about. But don't worry. They will take care of the rest of these people because they are on lists. They know where to find them, and they will be coming after those people. And this is how they are trying to work this out. And we are definitely going to see more executive orders, more laws until the false flag event, because what they always have is they always have all of these laws, all of these bills ready to go as soon as an event occurs. And they just so happen to say, look at that, we just have this bill sitting here waiting, let's pass it. And this is what they've done. I mean, go back to 9/11. The Patriot Act was just sitting there waiting for an event. And as soon as 9/11 happened, boom, Patriot Act. And of course the administration comes out and says the administration is committed to making sure that anyone who may pose a danger to themselves or others does not have access to a gun. And you have to remember, most of these people that are involved in these shootings, they didn't even own a gun. They got it from someplace else. So this has nothing to do with keeping the public safe, because I hate to say it, most of these gun incidents were false flag events. They were planned out very well, and there are many documentaries on these events to show that there are so many anomalies in these events that it doesn't even make sense. Now, we understand that Obama had the NSA out there, and he had a panel, and we had judges here saying it's unconstitutional, and then we had a federal judge come in and say it was constitutional. And what I say to this is the NSA, the government, the central bankers are going to do whatever they want. I mean, they spy on every single person. They blackmail people. And right now, the NSA is building a quantum computer to break all forms of encryption. So they're not, tailoring back the NSA program. They're moving this forward. They're going to move this lightning speed forward. And again, like I said before, they're getting rid of all humans, replacing them with computers for their administration staff so they don't have the problems with whistleblowers coming out. And right now, this goes on to say that the National Security Agency is building a quantum computer capable of breaking any encryption used to protect the most vital records around the world. The U.S. spy agency, shown to have deliberately weakened encryption standard, is seeking an advanced speed, cryptologically useful quantum computer that can bypass encryption that currently shields global banking, business, medical, and government records. So we can see what is going on here. And what I find very interesting is that most of our senators and congressmen in Washington, they really have no clue. Very few of them have a clue of what's really going on because they're really interested in stuffing their pockets with money, making investment deals, getting insider information, and becoming very, very wealthy on the backs of the people of the United States. And this is what they're doing there. So one senator says, hey, I just thought of this. And he wants to know, and this is Senator Bernie Sanders, is the NSA spying on us too? I mean, seriously? Yeah, they're spying on all of you. And when the time comes to blackmail you, that's what they're going to do. And this goes on to say, and in order to be specific, Sanders clarified, spying would include gathering metadata on calls made from official or personal phones, content from the websites visited or emails sent, or collected any other data from a third party not made available to the general public in regular course of business. And guess what the NSA said? Nothing. The NSA did not immediately return a request for comment. And hours after Sanders sent his letter, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence announced that FISA court on Friday renewed the domestic phone records bulk collection for another 90 days. The NSA is spying on everybody because they need to keep track of the American people. They need to find out who is investing and where money is. They need to understand what each government official is doing. They need to know the dirt on them so they can blackmail them just like they have the dirt on federal judges, and this way they can pass laws and say it's constitutional when it really isn't. And this is what it is being used for. They need to know what is going on in the other countries around the world, and this is what it's all about because we're heading towards the end game, people, and they need to know what is going on so they are ready for what is coming. Now, yesterday I reported on North Korea and the propaganda of them, telling America they're going to strike with a nuclear weapon and, they have missiles that are going to reach and they're going to hit South Korea. And we always see this propaganda come up whenever something is happening. Last time we saw North Korea, it was because North Korea was making a deal with Iran. And then again, it happened when North Korea was making a deal with Russia with a new rail system. And this time, you see it all over the news that North Korea is threatening again. Now, I was asking myself, why would they be threatening at this point? Why is the propaganda coming out from the U.S. and they're saying all of this, and that the threats are coming and we should be afraid of North Korea? And then if you look closer and you go past all of this, you see what happened. China will open up a high-speed rail line to North Korea border, which they said on Thursday in the state media, in a sign that China remains committed to boosting trade and economic ties with the isolated nuclear-armed state. So what are they doing? They are using a new rail system to connect to North Korea to ship goods back and forth, and guess what? They're going to bypass the U.S. dollar. And this is the real reason why these threats are always coming out. It is always against those countries that are not using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. Those are the enemies of the central bankers. If North Korea said, hey, you know what? Why don't you put a private Western central bank here and we'll use the U.S. dollar to sell every piece of good that we have here, North Korea would all of a sudden be a friend. They wouldn't be an enemy anymore, and everything would be absolutely fine. Now, we understand that the U.S. is losing control in the Middle East, and we understand that the U.S. invaded Iraq, and that was to get rid of uh, um, the leader in Iraq, and Saddam Hussein. And what is happening right now, since the puppet government has been placed into Iraq, the people there are rising up because they want the central bankers out, they want the puppet government out, and we are seeing that the U.S. is actually losing control there, and Iraq might be sliding towards a civil war. And we're seeing this happen in many of the Middle East states because the U.S. is trying to hold down every single country and make each one of these countries use the US dollar as the reserve currency. And this is why they're doing the drone strikes in all of these countries. In Yemen, they're doing it in Pakistan, they're doing it in Turkey, they're doing it in Lebanon, Libya, all these countries. They're trying to keep the people back so they can continually operate the private Western Central Bank and sell all the natural resources using the US dollar. This is what they're trying to do, but they're losing control right now. I mean, when we look at Egypt right now, they've made a deal with Russia. Egypt is allowing Russia to use the Alexandria port. They're purchasing weapons from Russia. They're getting aid from Russia. And the Saudi Arabia are also making deals because they realize what is happening with the U.S. dollar, so they're dealing with Russia and China. They're also putting together their Gulf Army to be ready for what is coming, and we see, all of this getting clearer and clearer as time goes on. Now, we understand, and I mentioned this in my other reports, that Syria has made a deal with the Russian that they're going to drill for oil off the Syrian coast. And of course, the Syria's opposition, central bankers, U.S. government, has condemned the signing last week of Syria's first ever offshore oil exploration deal with Russia, claiming oil blocks are being swapped for weapons to attack rebel forces. Well, Russia and Syria are kind of in bed together right now, just like the U.S. is supplying weapons to Syria to fight Syria, and Russia's on that side giving weapons to Syria to fight the rebels. And of course, who doesn't like this? Yeah, the U.S. government, the central bankers, because there's another natural resource that they're going to sell not using the U.S. dollar. And of course, this goes on to say the contract will enter into effect immediately despite U.S. and European sanctions against Syria. So the sanctions are not stopping this whatsoever. They're going around it because this has nothing to do with the private Western Central Bank. It has to do with Russia and Syria, and they're not using the U.S. dollar. So they could care less about the sanctions. And of course, the opposition, central bankers, U.S. government, remains suspicious of the deal, which will be fully funded by Russia, which they claim is the Assad regime's illegal signing of a contract to drill for oil and gas in Syria waters. I'm sorry, but Syria is a sovereign country. Assad is the president, and he could do pretty much whatever he wants, just like Obama does whatever he wants. Now, there was back, the NSA appeared on 60 Minutes, and they were talking about this BIOS attack that they thwarted, and they were able to save the American people from this horrendous BIOS attack. And then I started to think about this. Think about what they were saying at that time. That China, that's who they were blaming. China was able to get into every single person's computer and, create this BIOS malware, and everyone would be opening emails or ever how they would get it, and it would bring all the PCs and servers and everything down. That it would be very, very difficult to do for China. And if you really think about it, think about what has come out in the last couple days with the NSA. They have intercepted desktops and laptops. They intercepted them, and they placed additional hardware in the system, or they implanted some type of spyware on the system. Now, they were doing this. So, this is how I'm thinking. They have the ability to create this BIOS doomsday system that will bring down all computers, the financial institutions, the power grid, because they're the ones who have been intercepting all of these systems. They're the ones who have been making deals with Microsoft, with all these other manufacturers of iPhone, with the Android. They all have backdoors that the NSA has paid them. They have the ability for a doomsday scenario. Think about it for a second. Okay, now we realize, and I've been saying this a lot, the corporate media, and I mentioned this yesterday, they are really reporting a lot about terrorism. And this is starting to make me worry right now, more so than I ever been, because they are really pushing terrorism forward. And right now, during New Year's, 6 suspected terrorists killed in New Year's Eve. Police raided near Jakarta had planned to carry out a string of attacks targeted on the U.S. Embassy. And basically what happened was um, they have documents and paperwork where it reads, take your pistols, holy warriors, and prepare to attack the U.S. Embassy, Omar said, reading from the document during a press conference. Suicide attacks were also planned, he said, and they are really pushing these attacks forward, and they are letting the American people see that Al-Qaeda is coming after the U.S. And now we have Representative Poe saying that Al-Qaeda is still a major threat. Now we have Dianne Feinstein, we have Peter King, we have Mike Rogers, we have Representative Poe. They're all coming out and letting us know that Al-Qaeda is a huge threat. And this goes on to say that over the past year, in my role as chairman of the Terrorism Subcommittee of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I've held a multitude of hearings examining the threat of Al-Qaeda and its affiliates. Dozens of renowned terrorist experts and Obama administration officials gave their input on the current state of play. And after all that, I'm left with unfortunate conclusion that we are not winning this war. We don't even have a strategy, and Al-Qaeda is coming for us. And this goes right on to say, right now, Al-Qaeda controls or operates in more territory around the globe than at any point since its creation by the CIA in 1988. Today, Al-Qaeda is a complex, adaptive, and resilient organization. The administration's success against high-value targets have fostered a false sense of security, and Americans are not safe because Al-Qaeda is coming. And this makes me think that this is a lead up to the event, because what is happening now? Well, we have the feds preparing for violence that are targeting federal buildings. And this was reported on quite a while ago, where they were putting out bids to find security forces to guard the federal buildings, Social Security, IRS. It happened in New York, and we're seeing this happen in many other states right now. And of course, the Department of Homeland Security, spent about $58 million to hire armed guards in Baltimore. They spent about $80-something million in New York, and they are doing this throughout the country to guard against federal buildings. And we have to remember that the government has just ordered potassium iodide, which allows them to protect themselves against radiation. A lot of people are looking at Fukushima as this might erupt and radiation might pour into the United States, and they have all these packets ready to go. Or is it for some type of an event, a dirty nuclear bomb or some other type of nuclear weapon that is going to play into this event that is coming? Because we understand that the Fed right now is ready to taper. They are trying to make us all believe that the economy is recovering. But what's happening right now, if we look around the world, the people of every single one of these countries, they are not believing the government anymore. I mean, we're getting into 80-90%. They're losing faith in each one of their governments. Here in the U.S., the approval rating for Congress and Obama is low. really, really low in the single-digit percentage. This is how it begins. This is how the government, this is when they start to really worry. This is when they say, wait a minute, they're not believing our crap anymore, and we need to do something to get everyone out of this mindset. And this is when they start creating events. This is when war comes into play. This is when they start locking down everything because they are afraid of losing their power. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially prepared. Thanks a lot.